So the assigned topic for my presentation is based on liberalization. Uh, so I'll just start with the introduction, followed by why it started, then the history, meaning, policy, impact, pros and cons, privatization and globalization. Then I'll conclude. So starting off, in simple word, liberalization refers to a relaxation of government restriction in the areas of social, political, and economic policies. In the context of economic policy, liberalization refers to lessening of government regulation and restriction for greater participation by private entities. So what it means is that in the process of liberalization, the government or like the central authority, they could provide less intervention in terms of trade and investment. It is a process of removing control system in order to encourage economic development. The economy is thrown open and the best goods and service compete in the market and the consumer has a choice and monopolies they disappear. So earlier it only used to be like limited, but now the consumer, they have like more to choose, and there were more private firms. In India, economic liberalization is initiated in 1991 with the goal of making the economy more market oriented and expanding the role of private and foreign investment. It is also called the pre-liberalization era. So next would be why it started. So globally, liberalization, it started in order to bring a change in the attitude of state towards an industry, towards an industrial society. It also started in order to bring a change from a centrally planned economy to a market-led economy, where the private companies could equally compete along with the previously owned companies. Uh, it also started in order to bring a change from a stricter government intervention to minimal government intervention. And it also started in order to bring a change from a nationalized system to a privatized system. So why it started in India, it is because in 1991, India was like facing a balance of payment crisis, and it was lacking behind in terms of economy. So it had to like pledge its gold to foreign countries. Uh, it was a deal with the IMF, that is International for Monetary Fund. The Prime Minister of India at that time, that was P.V. Narasimha Rao, he knew that it was time for some bold decision. So next, moving on, history of liberalization in India. So in July 1991, India has taken a series of measures to structure the economy and improve the balance of payment. The new economic policy introduced change in several areas, and those policy they included, one would be a liberalization, and the second one is privatization, and the third is globalization of the economy. All of these combined are known as LPG, that is liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Uh, so what does economic liberalization in India it actually means? So it means the process of opening up the Indian economy to trade and investment with the rest of the world. Uh, it also means opening the door for doing business all over the world. Till 1991, India was like bounded or restricted with the import protection policy, wherein trade with the rest of the world was limited to certain exports. Uh, Foreign investment was very difficult to come to India due to bureaucratic framework. Bureaucratic framework, as in having government or centralized control over the country's economy. So the foreign traders couldn't intervene even if they wanted to. Uh, After the start of the economic liberalization, India started getting huge capital flows and it emerged as the second fastest growing country in the world. Mm, The next would be the policies of liberalization, which includes opening the gate for international trade and investment. So now both the public and the private sectors could go for international trade and investment, greater labor market flexibility, initiation of privatization. So more privately owned industries and firms, they started rising in competition, and the public sectors, they were like gradually turning into private sectors. Uh, Next would be tax reforms, inflation control measures, uh, lower tax rates for business. So as a result of like less government intervention, the private sectors they had to pay lower tax rate for business and investment. Mm, there were more open markets and less restriction on both domestic and foreign capital. Next would be impact of liberalization on Indian economy. So first, impact of liberalization would be increase in employment. Uh, so the rise in the private sector they led to more demand in labor and open doors for employment opportunities. Arrival of new technology or development of technology. The same thing with this. As the public and the private sectors, they were rising in number, like they were uh, rise in new technologies and development in infrastructure. This and identity at world level, increase in currency value, GDP growth, increase in consumption and adaptation of new lifestyle, an increment in competition and increment in foreign investors. So the next would be advantages of liberalization. The first point is development of economy without capital investment. The firms they no longer had to be independent on government, so they started developing on their own. Uh, Increase the foreign investment. Liberalization it helped people to like invest more on the foreign trades in order to boost their production. And the third one would be increase in consumption and control over prices. Uh, and as there were more monetary flow in the country, there were more consumption. Uh, and the fourth one would be free capital flow in the country, like there were movement of more capital in the country. Mm. Improvement of stock market performance and impact on the agricultural sector. So this impact on the agricultural sector, it is not it is yet to be measured. But back in 1991, as soon as like India started coping up with liberalization, there was like this huge modification in the cropping pattern of the country. So the next would be disadvantages. So there were economic destabilization, increased competition within the multinational companies. So the multinational companies they started competing with each other for better profit, and they started enhancing their product uh, with like increase or decreased their prices or whatsoever. The next would be loss to domestic or smaller units. The smaller units they could like no longer uh, they could no longer like reach to their customers satisfaction, and they started going down. And the fourth point would be increase dependence on foreign nation. So these industries and sectors they started depending more on foreign trades and investments, uh, and foreign direct investment impact on the banking sector as well. So this one is privatization and globalization. So I'll just read it out. Privatization means transfer of ownership or management of the enterprise from the public sector to the private sector. So in other words, it is the opening up of an industry that has been reserved for public sector to the private sector. Uh, and globalization, it means opening up the economy for foreign direct investment by creating favorable socio-economic and political climate for global business. In other words, globalization is simply buying and selling goods and service from or to any countries in the world. So, conclusion is economic liberalization has increased the responsibility and role of the private sector. At the same time, it has reduced the control of the government on economy affair. Most high-income countries have pursued the path of economic liberalization in recent decades, with the stated goal of maintaining or increasing their competitiveness as business environments. It is expected that the reforms would liberalize the Indian economy enough to create a conducive environment for rapid economic development. Thank you.